2022 was really memorable for the giant of Africa, Nigeria, in many ways. Being the year before the 2023 general election and the governorship elections in some states, there were numerous political moves, actions, announcements, campaigns, and declarations. 2022 was also 1 year in which the country experienced massive floods that had devastating effects on lives and property, causing displacement in many parts of the country. The Director General of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, Mustafa Habib Ahmed, noted that the flooding experienced that year was the worst in Nigerian history. The disaster affected 34 out of the nation's 36 states, with Jigawa, Rivers, Taraba, Cross River, and Delta being the worst hit.
There are 3,219,780 persons affected by floods this year. There are 1,427,370 persons that have been internally displaced. Approximately 2,776 persons have been injured, and approximately 612 people have been killed. 181,600 houses have been partially damaged, and another 123,807 houses have been totally damaged. Finally, 176,852 hectares of farmlands have been partially damaged, and 392,399 hectares of farmlands have been totally damaged.
The flood of 2022, it came and based on the level of forecast and preparedness, we managed it. It's because of dynamism. We had a sort of loss of lives that were extremely high against what we prepared for to minimize losses.
These incidents were not a surprise for agencies like NEMA, Ministry of Water Resources, Nigeria Hydrological Services, and the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, as they had warned states and governors of the impending disaster.
They're not taking the reports we're sending to them very seriously. Immediately, NIMET releases their report, we send the risk mapping to states, identifying risk areas that will be hit by disaster.
Floods are often caused by heavy or excessive rainfall, but other external factors can lead to destructive floods like those seen in Nigeria in 2022.
The dynamism is this. Last year rainfall was coming at a normal rate, but this year was a different pattern, which is the part of the climate change phenomenon. What happened this year, instead of rainfall to continue raining for 1, 2, 3, 4 months or weeks, it will stop and come on within hours. What's supposed to come out for 2, 3 weeks, we decide to come on within 2, 3, 4 hours.
We've been warned that we would have heavy floods because of this global warming, this climate changes going on. More heat, more evaporation, more rain. And so the dams in our bordering countries, they're being overwhelmed and they're having to release more water. And unfortunately, our own irrigation systems are not adequate enough to handle too much of water release.
The federal government, through NEMA, tried to mitigate the losses experienced as a result of the disaster.
Immediately, we roll out sanitizers, we roll out antiseptic because of the premises involved, mattresses, foam, food items were rolled out. The livelihood will include either grinding machine, sewing machine, water pumping machine, anything that will kickstart the family.
Those that we can resettle, we try to resettle them. But basically, it's still more of advocacy. Advocacy that kindly leave the lowland areas when we give the announcement that this water level is rising and let us as a state continue to do the needful. And we also need to let them know and imbibe the culture of insurance. The state cannot compensate you for those things. The state can only mitigate the impact on you. But on the long term, you need to inculcate the culture of insurance.
I would say that the government's response is not fantastic, if you ask me, because why is it that there's a pattern? Every year in 2012, there was a flood. In 2019, there was a flood. In 2020, there was a flood. In 2022, there was a flood. So why is that happening? Why is that happening repeatedly over time? And why are we seeing that every time it happens, it keeps getting worse? I don't think that the government does enough to put in place adequate measures, to sort of ease the pain that these people are going through. I don't think that the government is doing enough. I think that Nigerian governments are very fantastic in, putting together post-disaster measures or mechanisms. I wouldn't say that they're doing so well in putting, early warning systems in place, because I feel like it is a responsibility of agencies to put out early warning systems in place.
Floods are primarily caused by heavy rainfall, which is a natural phenomenon. But other factors cause it to assume a destructive dimension. One of such factors is climate change. According to the United Nations, climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Such shifts can be natural due to changes in the sun's activity. But since the 1800s, human activities have been the major driver of climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas.
Climate change and global warming are intricately linked, to the surging in flood incidents in Nigeria. Take, for instance, that you have a cup filled with water and you drop maybe a ball inside the cup. Obviously, you see that the water will spill over. So that's what happens in climate change. So aside the, difference or increase in the rise in temperature, of course, which changes weather patterns, you also see that ice that being melted and that causes flooding. There's going to be high rise in sea levels, intensifying the floods, So yeah, I would say that global warming and climate change are connected.
The way we've been dealing with nature, treating nature so negatively, because our streams and rivers, they used to have embankments where you have a lot of green trees and so on, and those trees, they stabilize the soil. A lot of those trees are gone. The soil erodes into the river, so the river is not able to accommodate as much water as it used to in the past. So basically, it's because of what we've been doing to nature. If you fight nature, she's obliged to fight you back.
In September 2022, Cameroonian authorities opened overflow spillways at the Lagdo Dam to ease the pressure on the dam as a result of rising water levels. Rivers connected to the Cameroonian dam, such as the Benue River, were affected by this, and the effect of this development was largely felt in surrounding states like Kogi, Benue, and some northeastern states.
That's around the Middle Belt, Kogi especially, and the part of Kwara. It also speaks to our maintenance culture. We had a dam that connects Ogun, Osun, and communication, discussion. When they say to you, please, this period of the year, because of heavy rain, we need to release the water from the dam, or else the dam will burst loose on its own, and it will be more destructive. Let people move from this area. Let them leave the low land areas to upland. People usually say it's a joke. That's our mentality. To start with, there is no reason why people should go and build on low land areas.
In Lagos, the state government noted that rainfall in the year 2023 was not as much as expected.
I think 2022 was very destructive. The state learned a lot of lessons. So last year, what we did was we set out very early to clear the drainages, clean out the primary channels, the secondary collectors as well, and a lot of advocacy went into it also. We also ensured we ramped up the construction of resilient infrastructure.
The state government removed structures blocking water channels and those built on wetlands to reduce or put a stop to floods the state was experiencing.
We never demolished. All we do and we keep doing is remove contraventions that impede on our waterways, canals, secondary collectors. If you have had cause to go and build on them, it behoves us to remove that contravention. And I'll start with Ikota. Ikota was a major channel, channel 44, system 44. To our surprise, before COVID, green area, wide enough, 12 villages petitioned that they're getting flooded because some very greedy developers had gone to cover up the channel and narrowed it down to something that became like a tertiary drainage system. So we went there. They served them notice before COVID. So when COVID came, the government and everybody had to shut down. When we went back there last year, what we saw was heart-wrenching. And we had a choice to make a judgment call for overriding public interest, which meant we have to remove those contraventions that had blocked the primary channel and opened up the channel of System 44 to the Ikota Creek. When we did that, the hue and cry was, so we had to play the video, show the notices that were served, showed the level of destruction they had done to the ecosystem by their greedy conduct, and why we had to do what we did for violating public interest. Same thing we did for them at VGC. For 15 years, it's been getting flooded. And we had a petition from the resident association that 3 houses extended their fence and building to block the collector that takes the water out of VGC to the lagoon behind them. So we went there, we made a judgment call, overriding public interest, and we removed the contravention that had blocked the waterway for 15 years and getting VGC flooded. People want the states to function, but out of their greed and being short-sighted, they forget that on their own, they have done things that have impeded the flow of water. So what do we do as a government? We owe the people a duty to take care of their safety, their own interest. And their interest goes beyond just security. Let them live in a conducive atmosphere. How will you be in a house that gets flooded perpetually? All because 1 or 2 persons had blocked the path for the water to move to the collector, maybe secondary collector or a primary channel. So that's what we have been doing. And whilst doing that, the message had always been clear. As a government, we shall not fold our hands to allow non-state actors take over the reins and then perpetuate damage to the ecosystem.
This move led to dangerous threats, but the commissioner vowed to continue the work he has been given.
Threat to life. Yes, people are threatened. Developers are ganged up. But for me, what is good is good, what is bad is bad. And when we choose to do this job, we choose to do it the right way, not the compromised way of doing it. So, for me, it comes to the terrain.
Litters and blocked drains are set to aid flooding in the state and the country at large. The Lagos government said clearing the drains will reduce destructive flooding.
As a people also, we need to learn the habits of proper waste disposal. Waste disposal is a major habit you need to inculcate. And in inculcating it, you need to see the good side of it. There is no reason under the heavens where you take your waste and throw them into a drainage system, cluster them up. It gets to a point, the water will flow out of that part, that tertiary drainage. Your tertiary drainage is for tenements, and then it's for the local government and the tenements to handle them. You don't have to wait for the flood to come to do that. You need to be anticipatory in your approach to it. Meaning, all year round, keep letting the water flow freely. And then for the secondary collector, as a state, as a government, we need to all year round do what we are doing now. clean them up. And then for the major ones, the primary channels, we need to tell the people there is no reason why you should close them up because you want more land.
Former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development stated that all 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory (FCT) were affected by the 2022 floods in Nigeria, with varying degrees of damage and affected people. Well over 650,000 hectares of farm crops were reportedly destroyed. Farmers lost their crops and farmlands.
The flood has affected me seriously because it has eroded some of my crops. A farm that I used to harvest at least 20 bags, but this time around I was able to only have not more than 10 bags. So you can see the disparity. So, and it is, since it is a natural disaster, there's nothing we can do, but only we can appeal to government that government should do something in order to mitigate the losses that we have experienced during the farming season.
In Yobe, flooding has washed away so many farmlands, so many foods, so many houses, among many others. And some of the farmers' farmlands were washed away by flooding. Some farmers borrow money from banks in terms of in a system that looks like a soft loan to farm or to invest their money. They have so many farmers have invested huge amount of money in farming business, mean to make a profit and return back the money to the bank where they brought it before. Therefore, there are so many farmers in a serious issue with the banks. There are so many farmers who see in a serious issue with corporate association, corporate society, where they link or where they borrow money to do farming businesses. Fortunately, they couldn't return it back because of this flooding.
Most of us are rice farmers these days, and that we cultivated a lot. You can get up to 5, 10, 20 trailers from that area, and I'm not exaggerating. One farmer can get up to 700 bags of rice. Another can get up to 1,200 bags of rice. But just towards about when the rice is about to, be harvested, then there was flooding, and it covered the entire area, and we lost millions and millions and millions of naira in that particular area. And so it has become a perennial problem during the rainy season. The only remedy, and we are crying to the authorities, both state, federal, other donor agencies, other non-governmental organizations, to come to the aid of the farmers of this place by assisting them in, moving into dry season farming, which is a little costly. During the rainy season, you depend on God Almighty to give you the rain. But during the dry season, you have to provide the water, so you can control it. So what we are saying is, if the federal government come in, since the administration, the renewed hope administration of his Mr. President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, is to do with agriculture, because whether you like it or not, that is the next gold mine of this particular nation. What we are crying is that if we can get assistance from government, improved seedlings, herbicides at affordable rate, but if the government can procure these particular machines at at a lower rate, because the more you buy, the lesser the unit price. They can now, I'm not saying they give them free to the farmers, they can now sell them at a lower price to the farmers, encourage them, and also improve the issue of water, that we have ponds and then they can dump some of the tributaries so that water is available, and we move into dry season farming, which has guarantee of trying to get the produce.
The floods are adding another layer of complexity to an already precarious humanitarian situation in the country, as insecurity continues to plague many parts of the country.
One of the problems we're going to be facing due to this flooding incident because it's displacing a lot of people. Most people will not have homes, and a father will want to ensure that his wife and children are well fed, his wife and children, are well taken care of, and that may lead him to, think twice. For me, I think it's going to result to possibly create some criminal activities. It could be stealing, robbery, kidnapping, or whatever the case may be. So, most times we need to understand that the reason why crime flourishes in a given environment, one of the causative factors is poverty. Yes, it's one of the causes of a crime. Poverty could lead someone to crime. Frustration could also lead people to crime. Even those that are internally displaced, they will want to, leave that camp and, go and survive for themselves. Survival of the fittest now. That is what we're going to be looking at. So for us to, curtail such kind of criminal activities from would-be criminals, those that internally displaced, the Nigerian government should look at, visiting these guys in their various camps, taking good care of them, carrying out a triage, in the sense that you need to just, check one who you think are highly vulnerable. But if the Nigerian government don't look at taking care of those internally displaced people, I think they are encouraging those guys to look into the side of crime.
Failing to plan is equal most times to planning to fail. Environmentalists have urged government to employ effective pre-disaster strategies to guard against destructive floods.
I think the bulk of the work would lie in pre-disaster measures. And I would say that the Nigerian government should, prioritize investment in early warning systems, climate resilient infrastructure and community-based adaptation strategies, reforestation efforts. We're talking about sustainable land use policies. We're talking about educational programs that can empower communities to actively participate in disaster risk reduction. I think that these are things that the government should do to put some of these, strategies in place and work closely with the likes of NEMA. What if there's a gap in their capacity? Their capacities should be built to effectively communicate those early warning systems to fellow Nigerians. I think that they might have a gap.
Early warnings, announcements, advocacy, monitoring. We've been doing that a lot. The state have been doing that, and we've been announcing the water level each day, each week, really from the Ogbonshore axis, where we have the tide being monitored across for the state.
Climate change and global warming are very much around us, but many still take it lightly and doubt its crippling effect on the environment.
They are entitled to their beliefs. However, we owe it a duty to ourselves to keep advocating that this is real, to keep telling them that we can't keep doing this the old way, to keep showing them proof, scientific proof, that climate change is real. There's nothing we can do about it except for us to adapt and change our behavior. And once we start doing that, things start getting better.
There has been a debate that climate change or global warming cannot be stopped because most of it is being caused by human factors, But the good news, I think we need to be very intentional about incorporating climate change in our educational system. I know that we don't have a particular subject designated particularly for climate change or global warming, but I think that it's important that we begin to consciously include that in academics. I would love to see a time where we would have that as a subject, where if you go to school, you're going to study climate change or global warming.
After all is said and done, it is the responsibility of all to care for the environment.
We have work to do. We have work to do to save this planet. We have work to do to save the state and to save this country. That job is on each and every one of us, individually and then collectively. We can't deny some scientific facts, and we can't continue to behave like the ostrich. What we have on ground has been scientifically proven to be real. The third world developing countries is the new frontier. The numbers are there. You need to give them more attention than you have been giving them.
Everyone has a part to play to ensure that the floods of 2022 magnitude do not happen again. We must ensure that our environment becomes as resilient as the Nigerian spirit.